Jesus Christ. I'm sad. Not because of this, or that, or this, but because I just remembered that Skylanders was a thing that used to exist and now it doesn't. I loved this franchise as a kid. It made up a huge part of my childhood and wallet, and as unfortunate as it is that we'll probably never get another game again, I can understand it. The Toys to Life genre has died out, the gimmick has run its course, and every major competitor has stopped trying except for But what is a Skylander anyway, you may ask? To which I say, what, have you been living under a rock? Skylanders was a series of games developed by, a lot of people actually. The idea was that you could buy a toy in real life, put it on a portal, and play as that character in the game. And this was honestly a really cool concept, before it was made completely obsolete. Listen, having video games interact with real life like this is still really cool, but when you take into consideration the production cost of these figurines, 10 euros per individual character gets a little steep. And the first game already had 32 characters in total, so if you wanted the full Skylanders experience, wasn't gonna be easy. Truly a scummy business tactic, locking every playable character behind a 10 euro paywall each. This game will never take off. Whoopsie daisy. I think the first thing that a lot of people will notice is that Spyro the Dragon is in this game. I think. This is because one of the lead developers at Toys for Bob had a 7-year-old son who was going through a hard time, but the Spyro the Dragon games helped him through them. For that reason, the developer requested for the character to be included in their upcoming game. That's not true actually, I completely made that story up. I am what one would call a prankster. Either way, they named the game after him, so I'm sure he'll play a major role in the story. He was included in the game's starter pack alongside Gil Grunt and Trigger Happy, who notably both use guns. Something tells me they had something going here. Every Skylander also came bundled with a couple other things. Firstly, there was of course the figurine that you use in the game, but they also came with a sticker, a webcode, more on that later, and a nice coaster. But I've been talking for far too long. Let's get to the actual game. Oh right, I was 9 years old. The lore is that this little chucklefuck over here, voiced by Invader Zim, has destroyed the local anti-evil machine and banished all the Skylanders to Earth as tiny statues. This implies that these figurines are alive, and that resellers are partaking in animal trafficking. By putting them on the Portal of Power, you transport them back to Skylands to fight for justice and peace and what the hell's this? Yeah, I kind of forgot that this game is made for children, so if you're looking for a challenge, we'll get to that. The game has you collecting elemental sources scattered throughout the world, in order to rebuild the thingamajig and stop chaos once and for all so that he may never return, just kidding. All in all, it's a fun game, but it doesn't really stand out compared to every other game after it, as they all have some sort of unique and interesting gimmick, not you, that sets them apart from each other. But for what it's worth, I think Spyro's Adventure was a great Kickstarter for the franchise. So then what's that webcode for? Well, you can enter this code on the Skylanders website for a little browser game called Skylanders Universe, so let's... Oh, hold on, I'm getting a call. Hello? Are you serious? Oh, okay, I'll tell him that, thanks. Right, so I've just been informed that Skylanders Universe shut down 10 years ago. Luckily, these codes also worked in the mobile game Skylanders Battleground and Lost Island. No wonder this franchise died out. Either way, Spyro's Adventure was a massive success. And as anyone in the gaming industry knows, success equals money equals more of the thing. And sure enough, the next year... This is my favorite Skylanders game. Part of the reason is mainly due to... But I played this game far more than Spyro's Adventure as a kid. This game looks very similar to the previous entry in terms of looks and gameplay, as proven by the fact that I've still been using footage from Spyro's Adventure up until now. Honestly, this game kind of feels like an extension of Spyro's Adventure, but better. It reuses a bunch of music and assets from the first game, but also brings a lot more new things to the table, such as a brand new story, new modes, and of course new characters. But this left people concerned. Could you still use your old figurines as Skylanders Giants? Well, yeah. If you're a fucking loser. Alongside all the new characters, almost every character from the original roster, except for Sunburn because fuck him in particular, got a re-release at some point in the series, usually in the form of a Series 2 figurine, otherwise known as a repos. This gave them a new attack called a Wow Pow. Some of these are really good, and others are really not good. They have done you dirty and I will not stand for it. As for the new Skylanders, every element got one new core Skylander and one giant, which aside from being a lot bigger, could also hold more Tic Tacs. The giants let you access exclusive areas or break through walls you'd otherwise need a bomb for, but otherwise they're basically just bigger and stronger Skylanders, making the gimmick kind of arbitrary. But who cares, they're giants, that's fucking cool. Somehow Chaos returned and is now seeking to gain control of an evil robot army, like any villain should do at least once in their lives. It's up to the Skylanders and the rest of the gang to stop him before— oh my god, I forgot to mention the other characters. Okay, lightning round, go. Eon. Floating tutorial head who lives on as a spirit after the core of light blew up. Translator's note, that's Peggy 7 language for he is dead. Hugo. More if he was a nerd. He's not in this game though, so he's not important. Flynn. This man, this absolute Sigma Alpha king of a guy, is the best character in the game. He's funny, he's confident, he's voiced by Patrick Warburton, you bitch! And I would squish him to mush the first opportunity I get. Callie. The serious one. Yeah, that's about all I can really say. She's not very, yeah. Glumshanks. Chaos' loyal butler and comic relief. He's very nice, I like him. Auric. Capitalism. Persephone. Capitalism. But often. Some of the new additions include a level cap increase from level 10 to 15, a new minigame, Super Smash Bros, and a ton of quality of life improvements. So many in fact that I can't be bothered to look up what they are. You'll just have to trust me. There's also a new difficulty setting as a reward for beating the game, which is great for people who thought the game was a little too fun. Oh my god! But yeah, as expected, Giants was very successful and made a lot of money. And you know how much Activision likes money, so naturally, a third game was already in the works. Although I'm very allergic to interesting gimmicks, so I really hope the next game isn't the most creative one in the series. I don't think it's exactly controversial that Swap Force has the coolest gimmick in the entire franchise, being able to swap the top and bottom halves of Skylanders like this, or even this. At this point, every new entry has sold more copies than the last, and I'm sure it's only gonna get better from here, don't look at that. I remember being very excited for Swap Force as a kid. Being the first Skylanders game for the next generation of consoles, the series got a gorgeous visual upgrade, if you ignored whatever the fuck the Wii was doing. And the more I saw the game, the more I wanted to play it, and eventually I got it. About a month ago, Swap Force was actually handled by a different developer to get these games out on a yearly basis, and it's clear to see. It's a massive step forward from the first two games in terms of art style, level design, and even sound design. The game introduces such things as the Portal Master rank, a completely new cast of characters plus Flynn, hi Flynn, a secondary antagonist in the form of Chaos' mom, who looked like an Area 51 escapee, and a philosophical concept of jumping, which was shortly after discovered to be possible in real life. Another new thing that came with Swap Force was a new and redesigned Portal of Power. Maybe it's speaking, but I've always preferred the original Portal design. I understand that they had to account for the maximum amount of NFC data the game could read, but the design feels a lot less natural to me personally. So I hope this was a one-time thing and that they won't make a new Portal for nearly every new game going forward. Why? Every element now has 2 core Skylanders and 2 swappable figures, allowing for a grand total of 256 possible combinations. Granted, most of them look like abominations, but honestly, isn't that kind of the point? The fun here doesn't come from trying to make a combination you'd let your daughter go to prom with. It comes from the fact that you can mix and match these things in the first place. Who cares if they're freaks of nature? This guy's called Free Jet, are you kidding? I wish I could get a jet for free. I would soar through the sky with a banner on the tail end that says, I don't care about Trap Team. Okay, now hear me out first. I don't think Trap Team is a bad game. It looks absolutely gorgeous, has a cool new roster of playable characters, and introduces the second coolest gimmick in the series, that being the ability to capture certain enemies and temporarily play as them. So then, why don't I care about it? Well, as the Skylanders franchise was growing, other companies started getting wind of its success, and tried their own hand at the Toys to Life genre. And I don't mean just any old gaming company. I'm talking Disney, Lego, fucking Angry Birds. This meant that Activision had to up the ante with their marketing strategy. Why, you thought Stump Smash was a match for Mickey Mouse? It's fucking Mickey Mouse. So to do this, they implemented their 3-part strategy for guaranteed success. Notice the quotation marks. Part 1. Traps. That is a weird looking toothpick. The way you trap these enemies is by defeating them in battle, and inserting one of these Who's-It-Was-Its into the new portal. Simple enough, right? Here's the catch. Each trap can only hold one villain at a time, and you can only trap villains with a trap of their corresponding element. So if you're planning to capture every villain in the game, you're gonna be spending a bunch of money on top of the already huge roster of Skylanders. Wait, what the fuck is that? Part 2. Light and Dark Elements. This game marks the debut of 2 new elements, Light and Dark, or as I like to call them, holy shit and what the fuck. These figures were incredibly rare, and if you really think about it, kinda pointless too. Every Skylanders game up until now has had these elemental gates that require the Skylander of its corresponding element to open. You could do this with any Skylander as long as they match the gate's element, until Crap Team decided that, no you can't, buy a wallop motherfucker. For whatever reason, they made elemental gates exclusive to Trap Masters, the new gimmick figures of this game. And with these 2 elements having only half the amount of characters, it meant that the light gate could only be opened by this disgusting thing. But this is a kid's game. You think little Timmy cares that Blackout is stupidly overpriced? Speaking of stupidly overpriced, Part 3. Eon's Elite. A few more Skylanders got their Series 2, 3, or 4 if your name is Gilgrunt, but there are still a few characters from the original roster who never got a re-release in any shape or form. So wouldn't it be funny if we did Gilgrunt again? These figures are the Eon's Elite, a selection of the most profitable, bravest heroes of Skylands with a metal coating, a golden base, and 3 times the strength of their regular counterparts. They retailed for €25, that is hysterical. It's pretty obvious that these were supposed to be collector's items, but the fact that I didn't even have a Wow Pow and were just glorified Series 1 figures makes them kinda lame, especially when we already have more interesting versions of these characters. In conclusion, all these things to buy and lame decisions in combination with the many bugs in this game rid me of any interest in buying this game or its figurines. They put this game on mobile though, which is pretty impressive. It even came with its own portal and controller. Sure would be a shame if this version of the game got discontinued and is no longer playable in any shape or form. Again, it's not a bad game by any means. It's actually pretty good. I just have no interest in playing it at all. In fact, I'd go as far as saying I'd be more interested if they made a Skylanders game where the main gimmick was just driving cars. I was joking, what the fuck is this? So Superchargers is kind of an odd case. After seeing how Trap Team on the Wii was running like a neglected poo, Activision realized that the franchise was evolving a little too fast for the Wii to keep up. So instead of porting the entire game that the console couldn't handle, they decided to compromise and only port 20% of it. It also has Donkey Kong in it, so make of that what you will. The Wii and 3DS versions of Superchargers were called Superchargers Racing, containing only the racing mode that the full game has, which on its own, in my opinion, doesn't really justify having to buy more figures for this game. But hey, props to Activision for only slightly embarrassing themselves. So as you may have gathered by now, the big selling point this time around is the addition of vehicles and racing. Yeah, my allergies aren't going off with this one. Compared to the gimmicks of Swap Wars and Trap Team, this is a bit underwhelming. It's kinda cool that the toys have actual movable components, but there's not much else to it once it's actually on the portal. Oh, sorry, my bad, that's a frying pan. It's an easy mistake to make. The roster's also an interesting one. Every single figure made for this game is a gimmick Skylander, and any Skylander returning from a previous game has been redesigned and given a brand new moveset. Jesus. On one hand, this is actually kinda cool. It gives these older characters a chance to adapt the series' more modern design philosophy, but on the other hand, I have very mixed feelings about these designs. You showed me 2 trigger-fingered gremlins with dual pistols. I feel more threatened by the one wearing a stuntman outfit than the one that's literally naked. What just came out of my mouth? Each of these new Skylanders also has their own vehicle, and if you pair a Supercharger with their respective vehicle, it gets a significant power-up, which I kinda like. But it also renders any other combination pointless. You can also customize your vehicle, but only if you're using a Supercharger, cause apparently the literal mechanic who builds tanks and fixes airships for a living doesn't know as much about vehicles as Dive Clubs over here. Freak. It wasn't exactly bad, but there's no doubt it was the weakest game in the series. On top of all the points I mentioned before, the people who grew up playing Skylanders have mostly already lost interest in the series at this point, and it wasn't doing enough to attract new players. They had one last chance to turn the situation around. One final opportunity to redeem themselves and return to the glory days, and I don't think I've seen a single franchise fuck it up this badly. Why do you look like that? Skylanders Imaginators was a bit of a turning point for the series. And by that I mean to turn off a cliffside road. There were no returning playable characters whatsoever in this game. Sorry Gilgrunt, it would have been really funny. Instead, this game's roster consists of the Senseis, masters of different fighting styles that even a handful of villains from Trap Team are part of. But these figures are not the main gimmick of Imaginators. So then, what was this game's big selling point? I don't know, you tell me. Imaginators lets you create your own Skylanders, letting you choose their appearance, element, fighting style, and so forth. Which sounds pretty cool on paper, until you remember that the whole appeal of Skylanders was the feeling of putting a toy on the portal and seeing that same character appear in game. What am I supposed to feel from this? Apathy? It's kinda lame that these aren't actual figures, but with the whole gimmick being customization, it makes sense that making figures for these was impossible. Or was it? There was a free tie-in game called Skylanders Creator that let you fully customize your character, and even order a custom 3D printed figure of them. It was released for mobile devices, and I'm sure you know the rest of the story by now. But it's not like Senseis were totally useless. They have the ability to power up your Imaginators, teach them a powerful attack, and unlock customization parts for them. And ignoring how much of a shitty business practice that is, I think it's a really cool way to link the two gimmicks together. But if you didn't want to spend to get more customization parts, there was always the alternative in the form of... I'm sorry. In the form of loot boxes! You could buy these bronze, silver, or gold mystery chests to get 5 random customization parts, with a free sense of buyer's guilt included. And this honestly might just be the funniest thing the Skylanders franchise has ever done. Okay, I stand corrected, that's pretty good too. It was pretty obvious that Activision was getting desperate. They were pumping out a Netflix show as a last-ditch effort to promote the game, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough to save the franchise from its inevitable downfall. And so, Imaginators was the last mainline game in the Skylanders franchise. It's kinda weird to think about how a series that seemed to dominate the world for a couple years died out as quickly as it did. Though if you think about it, it's easy to see why. In the end, the Toys to Life genre was just a trend, and a cleverly disguised way to combat piracy, but if anyone asks, I'm not the one who told you that. It was impressive at first, sure, but after a while, people had seen enough of it, especially with all the competition surrounding it. So what sort of impact did Skylanders leave on the world? Well, if not for Skylanders, we wouldn't have gotten this. So thank God for that. And even so, they did release one more mobile game called Skylanders Ring of Heroes. Are you kidding me?